The rain came without warning. One moment the sky above Somerset had been nothing more than a dull sheet of gray clouds hanging quietly over the countryside. The next moment the heavens opened with sudden force. Rain poured down hard and fast, striking the gravel road and stone walls with a sharp sound that filled the air. Edmund Harwick did not move. He stood at the tall iron gate of Western Hall, one gloved hand resting against the cold metal bars. Water ran down the back of his collar and soaked into the heavy wool of his coat. His dark horse waited patiently a short distance behind him, shifting slightly to escape the worst of the storm. But Edmund remained where he was. He looked straight ahead at the large stone house at the end of the long gravel drive. Western Hall stood quiet and proud. Beneath the rain, its windows glowed with warm light from inside, bright against the gray afternoon. The gardens surrounding it were neat and perfectly ordered. The hedges were trimmed clean. The paths were smooth. Rose bushes lined the eastern wall in careful rows. 5 years. Edmund had not seen this place in 5 years. He closed his eyes briefly as rain struck his face. You can still leave. The thought came to him calmly. It sounded like the voice he had trained himself to listen to for the past 5 years. The careful voice. The sensible voice. You can turn around, mount your horse, and ride back to London. Write a polite letter. Offer your congratulations like a civilized man. That is what a duke should do. That is what Edmund Harwick had spent years teaching himself to be. A man who did not allow his heart to rule his decisions. But when he opened his eyes again, his gaze lifted toward the second window on the upper floor. Clara Ara's window. He had not meant to remember it so clearly, yet there it was. The second from the left, the one with the narrow crack in the wooden shutter that had never been repaired. The light in that window was warm. Someone was inside. Perhaps she was reading near the fire. Perhaps she was writing at her desk. Perhaps she was simply sitting quietly, as she had always liked to do. The simple thought made his chest tighten. 5 years too late, or perhaps exactly on time. He took a slow breath and pushed the gate open. The hinges moved smoothly without a sound. Lady Weston had always insisted everything at Western Hall be properly maintained. Edmund walked slowly up the long gravel drive, rain falling heavily around him. His back was straight, his pace steady. By the time he reached the front steps, the door opened. The butler stood there waiting. Horses had served the Weston family longer than Edmund had been alive. The old man looked at him calmly with the quiet understanding of someone who had seen many complicated moments in life. "Your Grace," the butler said respectfully. He stepped aside. "Shall I take your coat?" Edmund removed his gloves first, then shrugged out of the soaked coat and handed both to him. "Is Lady Weston at home?" he asked. "She is in the parlor with Lord Fenwick." The name landed quietly in Edmund's chest. Lord Henry Fenwick, the man Clara Ara Weston would marry in 3 weeks. "And Lady Clara Ara?" Edmund asked carefully. The butler paused just slightly before answering. "Lady Clara Ara is in the library, Your Grace." Of course she was. She had always loved that room. "Announce me to Lady Weston," Edmund said. "I will wait." The parlor of Western Hall smelled of lavender and warm candle wax. Lady Weston rose when he entered the room, her expression warm but not entirely surprised. "Your Grace," she said politely. "What an unexpected pleasure." Edmund bowed over her hand. "I arrived in Somerset this morning." "Estate business?" she asked. "Yes." The lie came smoothly. He had practiced it on the long ride from London. Henry Fenwick stood from his chair nearby. He was a tall man with steady eyes and the calm manner of someone comfortable in his place in the world. Edmund had known him casually for years through London society. Fenwick offered his hand. "Harwick, good to see you." "And you," Edmund replied. "We heard you spent the entire season in London," Fenwick said easily. "What brings you back to Somerset?" "Estate matters," Edmund answered. Lady Weston smiled pleasantly. "Well then, you must join us for dinner tomorrow evening. Henry will be here as well. You can properly congratulate him." Edmund met her gaze calmly. "I would be honored." He did not see Clara Ara that evening. Instead, he returned to the small inn in the village and sat alone by the fire in his room for a long time. Rain tapped against the window. You had your chance. The thought came again, quieter this time. 5 years ago you stood in that garden and said nothing. You watched her walk away. You told yourself it was the honorable choice, that a woman like Clara Ara deserved a simple life without the heavy responsibilities that came with marrying a duke. You told yourself it was for her happiness. Edmund pressed his hands against his eyes. "No," he murmured softly. It had not been honor. It had been fear. Clara Ara Weston heard his name before she saw him. She sat in the library window seat with a book open in her lap. Rain fell steadily against the glass, while the fire burned softly nearby. She had not been reading. Her thoughts had been drifting. The wedding was only 3 weeks away. Then she heard the butler's voice downstairs. "Your Grace!" Her heart suddenly beat faster. It cannot be him. She told herself that quickly, but then she heard the voice, deep, calm, unmistakable. "Is Lady Clara at home?" Her hands closed slowly around the book. 5 years had passed, yet she recognized his voice instantly. She did not move from the window seat. Instead, she sat perfectly still and stared at the rain beyond the glass. Edmund Harwick had come back, and somewhere deep inside herself, she realized she had known he would. She saw him the next afternoon. Her mother had arranged a walk in the gardens. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled fresh with early spring. Lady Weston left them together after only a few minutes. Clara Ara watched her disappear into the house before turning toward him. Edmund stood on the gravel path with his hat in his hands. He looked exactly the same. Tall, dark hair, serious eyes that seemed to look straight through every careful wall she had built over the past 5 years. "Clara," he said quietly. "Not Lady Clara Ara, not Miss Weston, just Clara." She felt the familiar tremor of emotion and forced it down. "Your Grace," she replied politely. His eyes shifted slightly at the formality. "Thank you for allowing me to call." "My mother arranged it," she said calmly. A faint hint of a smile touched his mouth. "Some things have not changed. Many things have," she replied. She turned and began walking slowly down the garden path. He walked beside her. "How is London?" she asked lightly. "London is the same as always." "And what brings you to Somerset now?" He did not answer immediately. She waited. Finally he spoke. "I read the announcement in the Gazette." Clara Ara stopped walking. Her eyes moved toward the rose bushes beside the path. "Congratulations were not required in person," she said. "A letter would have been sufficient." "Clara," he said her name quietly. She turned to face him. He was watching her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "I am not entirely certain," he admitted. She turned away again quickly. Her heart was beating too fast. "I hope you will join us for dinner tomorrow evening," she said calmly. "Henry will be here." "I know," Edmund replied. "Good," she said. "Then it will be a pleasant evening." She walked back toward the house without looking at him again, but she could feel his eyes following her all the way across the garden. Dinner at Western Hall the next evening was arranged with careful precision. The long mahogany table could easily seat 12 guests, yet only 6 chairs had been placed around it. The small number created a closeness that could not be avoided. Clara Ara noticed it the moment she stepped into the dining room. Her mother, of course. Lady Weston never arranged anything without purpose. Clara Ara wore a simple muslin gown, the color of pale cream. Her hair was arranged neatly, though a few loose strands framed her face. She stood quietly near the doorway for a moment, studying the table. Her mother sat at one end. Henry Fenwick sat beside her. Mrs. Oldcroft, Lady Weston's longtime companion, sat across from him. Thomas Fenwick, Henry's younger brother, occupied the seat near the far corner. And directly across from Clarara's place sat Edmund Harwick. Clara took a slow breath and moved to her chair beside Henry. Dinner began pleasantly. Thomas spoke enthusiastically about horses. He had the cheerful habit of speaking quickly and often, which filled the room with easy conversation. Henry listened with patience and laughed warmly at his brother's stories. Clara appreciated that about him. Henry Fenwick never tried to command attention. He spoke when he had something meaningful to say and allowed others to shine when they wished. He refilled Clarara's wineglass gently when it was empty. He asked if she liked the soup. He remembered the small details that mattered. Across the table, Edmund sat quietly. He spoke when spoken to. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened more than he talked. But sometimes, without warning, his gaze lifted toward Clara. Not boldly, not in a way that others might notice. Simply looking, the way he had always looked at her. Carefully, as if she were something worth understanding. The first time she noticed it during the soup course, she quickly looked away and began speaking to Mrs. Oldcroft about the county assembly. The second time during the fish course, she reached for her glass and found her fingers slightly unsteady. The third time, she made the mistake of meeting his gaze, only for a moment. But in that moment, she saw something familiar in his expression, something contained, something he was holding carefully behind quiet restraint. Her heart tightened. She knew that look. She had seen it once before, 5 years ago in the same garden. Back then, she had waited for him to speak. He never had. Henry's hand found hers gently beneath the table. She looked at him and smiled. It was a genuine smile. Henry was kind. He deserved honesty and warmth, and she cared for him truly. Yet the weight in her chest remained. After dinner, the gentlemen stayed in the dining room, while the ladies moved to the drawing room. Clara sat at the pianoforte. She began playing a piece she had known since childhood. The familiar music filled the room softly, while the fire crackled behind her. Playing helped quiet her thoughts. The final notes faded into silence. You always play when you are unsettled. She did not turn around. She had heard the drawing room door open moments earlier. I play when I enjoy playing, she said calmly. Edmund walked farther into the room. And sometimes, he said quietly, you play because you need somewhere to put what you cannot say. Clara folded her hands in her lap. That is very observant of you. Are the others coming? She asked. Your mother is showing Henry her rose catalog. Thomas has fallen asleep in the dining chair. A short pause. So, not immediately. Clara slowly turned to face him. He stood near the fireplace. The firelight touched the sharp lines of his face, making his expression appear both softer and more serious. Why did you come here, Edmund? She asked quietly. This time he did not avoid the question. Because I read the announcement, he said, and I could not stay away. Silence filled the room. I told myself I had other reasons, he continued slowly. Estate matters. Business in Somerset. She watched him carefully. And I was lying to myself. The fire shifted behind him. "Clara," he said gently, "I am not here to create difficulty for you." "And yet you have," she replied softly. He nodded once. "And yet I have." At that moment, the drawing room door opened. Lady Weston entered with Henry beside her. Clara turned quickly back to the pianoforte and began another piece. The music covered the silence between them. 3 days passed. Edmund visited Western Hall twice during proper calling hours. Both times Clara was present. Both times Lady Weston found subtle ways to leave them alone for short moments. Clara handled the encounters carefully. She spoke politely. She kept the conversation calm. What she could not control was the quiet understanding that seemed to grow between them each time their eyes met. On the 4th afternoon, Lady Weston suggested a ride before supper. The weather had turned warm and bright. The countryside around Western Hall looked beautiful in the early spring sunlight. Clara agreed without objection. Soon, 4 horses moved slowly down the eastern lane. Clara rode beside Henry. Edmund followed slightly behind them. Thomas rode ahead enthusiastically, chasing some discovery further down the road. Henry spoke gently about the wedding arrangements. "The church has been confirmed," he said, "and the guest list is nearly finished." Clara nodded. "That sounds very good." His voice was calm and kind. "I thought we might keep the ceremony simple," he added. Before she could reply, Thomas shouted excitedly from around the bend, "There is a heron at the mill pond." Henry laughed. "You will forgive me," he said warmly. "Of course." He rode ahead toward his brother. Soon the lane grew quiet. Edmund's horse moved beside Clara's. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Edmund said quietly, "He is a good man." "I know. I mean that sincerely." "I know you do." She looked ahead at the road. "He is kind and steady," she continued. "He has never once made me doubt his intentions." "Those are not small things." "No," Edmund said. "They are not." Silence followed again. Then he asked softly, "Are you happy?" The question surprised her. It was not accusatory. It was not demanding. Simply honest. She thought about it carefully. "I am content," she said finally. It was the most truthful answer she could give. Edmund nodded slowly. "Clara," he began. "Do not," she interrupted gently. "Whatever you are about to say, consider how long you had to say it." Her voice remained calm. "And consider where we are now." He breathed slowly and looked ahead. "You are right," he said quietly. "That is why I will not say it." Another pause passed. "But I am here," he added. "That should tell you something." She understood exactly what it told her, and that was precisely the problem. They finished the ride in quiet conversation with Henry and Thomas, but the question remained with her long after they returned home. That night, Clara sat at her writing desk. She placed a sheet of paper before her. At the top, she wrote a single name, Henry. Then she sat still for a long time. The candle burned slowly beside her. Finally, she folded the blank paper and placed it in the drawer without writing another word. Somewhere deep inside her, she already knew the truth. She simply had not yet found the courage to face it. The letter arrived at Edmund's rooms at the inn on the 5th morning. The village outside his window was still quiet. A pale morning light stretched across the rooftops, and the air carried the cool freshness of early spring. Edmund recognized Clara's handwriting immediately. The letters were careful and steady. She had always written the way she spoke, with clarity and thought. He opened the letter slowly. He read every line once. Then he read it again. She had written with honesty, She had told him she believed she understood why he had come. She had asked him to consider whether what he called kindness was truly kindness or something more complicated. And she had asked him to be honest with himself. When he finished reading, Edmund folded the letter and placed it inside his coat. He stood at the window for a long moment. 5 years of distance had not changed the truth. He knew exactly why he had come. That afternoon, he returned to Western Hall. Lady Weston was not at home. The butler informed him calmly. "Lady Clara Ara is in the garden." Edmund walked through the house and out toward the walled garden behind it. He found her near the old stone bench beneath the large beech tree. She stood beside the roses in a pale blue walking dress, her hair uncovered in the warm sunlight. She had clearly heard him approaching. When he stopped a few feet away, she turned to face him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Finally, Edmund took the letter from his coat and placed it carefully on the stone bench between them. "You were right," he said quietly. She glanced at the letter and then back at him. "About what?" "About all of it." He paused briefly. "I came because I read the announcement and realized I could not stay away." He looked directly at her. "I told myself it was for you, that I needed to make sure you were choosing freely." He exhaled slowly, but that was not the whole truth. Clara Ara's voice was calm. "What is the whole truth?" He met her gaze. "You already know." For a moment, her expression shifted slightly. "You had 5 years, Edmund," she said softly. "I know." I waited. Her voice remained gentle but steady. "I thought you would say something." He lowered his eyes briefly. "I know. You were afraid. Yes. Of what?" He considered the question carefully. "Of wanting something too much," he said quietly, "and of losing it." He hesitated. "My parents' marriage was not a happy one. I grew up believing that needing someone deeply only led to pain." Clara Ara watched him silently. "That may be the most foolish thing I have ever heard you say," she replied softly. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Yes," he said. "I have begun to realize that." She looked down at the letter again. "Henry is a good man," she said. "I know. I chose him carefully. I believed I could build a good life with him." She lifted her eyes. "But I am no longer certain whether I chose him because I truly wanted that life or because it was the safest choice available." The garden was very quiet. A bee drifted slowly among the roses. "That is the question you should be asking yourself," she said. "Not me." "I have asked it," Edmund replied, "and I know my answer." She studied him carefully. "Do you?" "Clara," he said softly. "I was too late 5 years ago. I know that. I am not here to demand anything from you." He held her gaze. "But I needed you to know the truth." She raised her hand suddenly. "Do not say it." His voice stopped. "Not now," she continued. "Not while Henry is still planning a wedding with me." Her voice trembled slightly for the first time. "You do not get to say those words now and then. Leave me with them." Edmund was silent. She was right. He nodded slowly. "All right," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up the letter and walked back toward the house. Henry Fenwick was not a foolish man. He had noticed the change between them from the first dinner. He had seen it in the quiet glances across the table, in the careful way Clara Ara avoided looking directly at Edmund, and in the way Edmund watched her when he believed no one noticed. On the 5th evening, he came to Edmund's rooms at the inn. Edmund opened the door himself. Henry stepped inside calmly. "I will speak plainly," Henry said. "You are in love with her." It was not a question. "Yes," Edmund answered. Henry nodded slightly. "Since when?" "Since the summer of 1807. Henry studied him carefully. "She keeps your letters." Edmund's expression changed. "The ones you sent after that summer. The polite letters about nothing. Henry continued calmly. She kept every one. Silence filled the room. Henry sighed softly. I thought it was simply sentiment. He looked directly at Edmund. Now, I am not so sure. He stepped closer. If I asked her today whether she truly wished to marry me, what do you think she would say? Edmund answered honestly. I do not know. Henry nodded slowly. Neither do I. He moved toward the door. She deserves happiness, Henry said, not simply a comfortable life. Then he left. The next morning, Clara Ara found a letter beneath her bedroom door. It was from Henry. She sat on the edge of her bed and read it carefully. Henry had written with kindness and honesty. He told her he loved her. But he wanted her to be certain. He did not want a wife who had chosen him only because it seemed sensible. He wanted a wife who chose him fully. When she finished reading, Clara Ara sat quietly for a long time. Then she went to the garden. The morning air smelled fresh and cool. She walked slowly along the rose path and stopped at the stone bench. Henry's question echoed in her mind. Are you happy? She thought about the past 5 years. She had tried to move forward. She had tried to build a life that made sense, but somewhere deep inside, she had never fully let go of the feeling she had once shared with Edmund. Finally, she stood up. She returned to the house and wrote a letter to Henry. This time, she did not stop halfway. She wrote honestly. She thanked him for his kindness and told him he deserved someone who chose him without hesitation. Then she sealed the letter. After that, she walked out of the house. She asked at the stables where Edmund was. The stable boy pointed toward the south field behind the inn. She crossed the field slowly. Edmund sat on a fence post nearby, his horse grazing beside him. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. When he realized she had come directly to him, something changed in his expression. He stood. She stopped a few feet away. I wrote to Henry, she said quietly. Edmund waited. I told him I cannot marry him. The wind moved softly across the field. I care for him, she continued, but he deserves someone who loves him completely. She lifted her eyes. And that is not me. Edmund remained silent. I am not here because you came, she said. I am here because his letter forced me to answer a question I had been avoiding. She took a steady breath. I waited for you 5 years ago. I believed your silence meant you did not love me. Her voice softened, but the truth is I never stopped hoping I was wrong. Edmund stepped closer. Clara Ara, he said quietly, I love you. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 5 years. I have loved you since that summer. I was afraid then. I will not be afraid now. She felt her chest tighten. You took a very long time, she said. I know. I am still angry about it. You have every right to be. She looked at him for a long moment. Henry is a good man, she said quietly. Yes. I hurt him. He will recover. She studied Edmund's face. You will need to speak to my mother. A small smile touched his mouth. I will. She will be impossible. I expect that. Clara Ara turned and began walking back across the field toward Western Hall. Edmund walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, beside her. Their arms brushed once as they walked. Neither of them moved away. When they reached the house, Lady Weston received them in the morning parlor. She looked from Edmund to her daughter. Then she rang the bell. Bring tea, she told the butler calmly. She turned back to Edmund. Sit down, Your Grace. You are going to explain everything. Clara Ara tried not to smile. Outside the windows, the roses in the garden opened slowly in the warm spring sun. 5 years too late, or perhaps exactly on time.